Hi everyone, hope you're good. My name's Mike Burgess. Some of you I've probably met virtually previously on the Zoom call that we did recently. So basically this is a kind of a first video for you guys with respect to a kind of first instalment of some of the stuff we're going to be talking about in respect to the music business. So the focus really of this first video is talk about an overview of the music business. And there are 5 key areas that we're going to look at, and they are the live music industry, music publishing, recorded music, music management, and of course marketing. So the first area that I want to talk to you about is obviously the live music industry. Now, unsurprisingly, the live music industry focuses around the ability for people to be able to perform live, whatever capacity that may be, whether that's as a DJ, whether that's as an MC, as a band, as a singer-songwriter. But fundamentally, the live music industry, as you can imagine, is based around live performance, the kind of key pivotal bit there. So something that I always say, I think it's very important to be able to understand an industry. I think you have to understand the roles that exist within the industry. I could drone on for a long time about the importance of bits of the live music industry, but I think fundamentally what is useful perhaps at this stage, whilst I'm giving an overview of the live industry, is to talk about who are the key players in that industry. So we have to think about tour managers, venue managers, front of house engineers, monitor engineers, and all the other people that basically exist in this space. Now, for example, the role of the tour manager is fundamentally to get the band from A to B, monitor their schedule, make sure everything is correct on the day, but also to plan aspects of the tour in advance, usually in consultation with the booking agent, the promoter, and the artist's manager. You have a number of different engineers involved in the live world as well. So you normally have what's called a front of house engineer. So if you've been stood in a gig venue and you've been watching a show, there's usually a mix engineer in the middle of the room. Well, that's your front of house engineer. They are front of house, right at the front. They can see the front of the house, which is the stage and the audience, and they can monitor the overall sound from there. And you also have a monitor engineer typically, so if you've been looking at a gig stage, usually on the left or the right hand side there'll be another engineer with another mixing desk, and that person's role there is to mainly adjust what's going on in people's earphones or in-ear monitors or their monitors that are on the stage. So you have a couple of different types of engineer. Of course, you do also have lighting engineers if you're working at that level where you need somebody who's involved in the lighting programming and the engineering of the what's happening when visually. Obviously, we can't not talk about the role of the booking agent. The booking agent fundamentally is the artist's representation when it comes to being booked for a show live. So the booking agent will typically be talking to the promoter. The promoter is the person that is booking the event, putting the event together, and the booking agent is the person that's dealing with the inquiries for the artist, X amount of money for X date, X show, X city, wherever that gig may be. The booking agent will be dealing with confirming that financially and logistically, and then confirming to the promoter that that show can take place. Now, it's important to remember that whilst I've been through a few of the roles of the live music industry, there are, of course, others. And I think it's also important to be realistic at this stage. These sorts of roles for you guys as artists and creatives, typically you're not going to come into contact with that many people perhaps in those roles just yet. Not all of those roles will exist in a concert perhaps that's under 200 capacity. So if you go to a much smaller gig, if you go to a gig perhaps at sort of venue like Yes Basement or Jimmy's in Manchester, because those are much smaller venues, typically you won't have perhaps a tour manager. There will typically be a promoter, maybe there's an agent involved, and there'll certainly be a front of house engineer, but maybe there'll be no tour manager and no monitor engineer at that point. If you do go to a larger show, then you definitely can expect to see all of those people on the ground on the day working on the show. So I'm going to give a bit of an overview now of our second area of the music industry, which is the music publishing industry. So the music publishing industry is predominantly focused on supporting songwriters and composers who write music. Now, it's important to differentiate that a music publisher does not deal with the recorded music side of this industry. That's the recorded music industry, which we'll touch on in a minute, and that's where you find record labels. The role of a music publisher is very different to the role of a record label. And the key difference is that the role of the music publisher only deals with making money from the core song or composition rather than the recording of the song or composition. That becomes the role of the label. A quick bit of history for you. In the 1800s, before we had recorded music, the only way to get hold of a song that was popular of the day would be to go to a music shop and buy the sheet music for that song. Then you'd take that home and learn how to play it on the piano, and that would be perhaps your Saturday night entertainment of you sitting around the piano playing that song melodically and singing it, perhaps to yourself or to your family, and that would have been, the X factor of the day, the entertainment for the family on the Saturday night. So that was the only way in which you could get hold of popular songs of the day. Now, obviously, fast forward to recorded music and that ability to be able to record a version of the song. We now have many more ways of which that song or composition can now be used because we have a recorded version of it. And obviously some of the uses of that song might be still being just performing it live. The role of the music publisher is to collect money from the use of that recording live. But additionally, if that song is used in a recording, whether that's physically on vinyl or CD, or whether it's digitally, they collect money for the use of that song in those formats. And again, if the song is recorded and then that song is placed into a film, TV advert, or computer game, again, the music publisher will collect money for the songwriter. So the third area that we're going to talk about briefly is the recorded music industry. So as I've already alluded to, this is the area of which record labels come into play. And again, going back to something we talked about in respect of live music at the beginning, there are a number of roles that exist within the recorded music world. Something you may be aware of is that record labels typically have an A&R team. Now, an A&R stands for an artist and repertoire team. And typically the role of the A&R team is to find recording artists. Again, remember we're talking about recording artists, not songwriters. Sometimes they will, of course, be the same thing, but at this stage we're talking about recording artists. So their job is to find great recording artists, perhaps with a great voice or a great band, and find songs, repertoire to go with that band or singer. So typically the role of the A&R is to match up great recording talent with great songs. So we have an A&R team with various different roles. You might have A&R scouts, A&R managers, and they will have different levels of responsibility. And additionally, you'll have a business affairs team in a record label that will deal with offering contracts, negotiations, generally the business side of doing record deals and the recorded music industry. A quick example of maybe where to bring some differentiation in for you between the role of the publisher and the role of the record label. In the case where a company, say Nike or Adidas, want to use a piece of recorded music that's pre-existing, perhaps in an advert, they would have to approach both the music publisher to clear the rights of the song, and they would also have to approach the record label to clear the rights of the recorded version of the song, of the recording, the master recording. You will often hear on adverts, particularly around Christmas time, for example, if you think about the John Lewis Christmas ad, there's been a number of years where you've heard a song on the advert and gone, that sounds familiar. You know the song, but it's not the usual singer singing it. It's not the usual recorded version. Often this is for a number of reasons, but the predominant reason is because the music publisher has been approached to clear the rights for the song to be used, to be re-recorded, for that song to be used in a capacity of it being re-recorded. And the publisher said, no problem, we've got no issue with that song being re-recorded or being used. But then they've gone to the record label, and the record label has said, we're not happy for that, our version of the recording to be used. So we don't want our recorded version of that song to be used in this advert. So what will happen at that point is Nike or Adidas, whoever the client is they will approach another artist to re-record the song because the music publisher has given permission for the song to be used. That then creates a new master recording, which is owned by a new party, typically the person that pays for it, and that enables Nike or Adidas to use that song, but a new version of it, a new recording of it in the commercial. Music management is a particularly important aspect of the music industry, and I think it's worth spending some time thinking about this just during this video. Music managers effectively sit between a lawyer and an artist, and they will effectively take care of the day-to-day management of the artist. And typically that will be two areas. That will be the creative management, so maybe helping them with feedback on songwriting, production, generally picking songs that are going to be released and perhaps the marketing process of that. And then there's the other side of things, which is more the business management side of things, which might be negotiating contracts, dealing with the lawyer, dealing with the accountant, perhaps connecting with the booking agent, generally dealing with the money side of the artist's career. Now, you tend to have three types of managers. You tend to either have someone that comes up alongside the manager, so maybe a friend, and there have been countless examples of that in recent years where a friend of the artist has ended up becoming the manager and learning on the job. Stormzy's manager, Tiny Temper's manager, Giggs' manager, Nath Smalls' manager. All of those managers have been friends of the artist and they've worked with them and learned as the artist has learned. So that's a sort of type 1 manager. Type 2 manager might be somebody more like myself, where they've had a career as an artist and then they've decided to transfer those skills to being a manager, and then they've found talent and managed them through a period of time. And I guess the third type of manager is somebody who's obviously been in the industry for a number of years, perhaps as a manager, they've been going for 20 years, and they're looking for new talent. So you kind of have three different types of managers. Obviously, the question of how does the manager earn money is going to come up at some point. And a manager typically earns 20% of an artist's earnings. So it's obviously quite a difficult job for a manager to work with an artist in the early days, because the manager is earning 20% of what the artist is earning, which is typically going to be for the first year or so, probably not very much. So it's always important to find a manager that really believes in you as an artist, and that will go the full hog and really commit to that artist, even though perhaps there's no money coming in, which is an ask. Probably the most important thing that a manager must do in his career or her career is to provide a duty of care over the artist. So any manager that's working with a creative person must be thinking about what's best for the artist and not what's best for the manager. So the fifth and final area that we're going to touch on briefly in this video is music marketing. Now, I've lumped lots of different roles into this area, but it is important just to understand some of these as we go. So within music marketing, you have a number of different areas of consideration with any kind of marketing. So you have to give some consideration to promotion, you have to give some consideration to public relations, you have to give some consideration to advertising, and there are a number of other things that we have to consider. So therefore, particularly within the public relations sector, which you may have heard referred to as PR previously, you'll have a radio plugger, a TV plugger, perhaps a social media influencer person or a plugger, which will be involved in plugging those songs or that campaign to social media influencers, ideally to get them to talk about that on their channels. Additionally, you will have press people, and they will be involved in trying to get an artist maybe physical press, magazines, newspapers, etc., or digital media such as blogs and online content. As part of the music marketing side of things as well, you may also have people involved in what we call brand activations or endorsements, sponsorship deals, and they will also perhaps approach music managers with offers from brands to work with their artist and a certain brand to collaborate. And again, this is all marketing. This is all marketing related examples of how the music industry works. So if you track back, we have the live music industry, where songs are being performed typically. We have the publishing world, which is where money is being generated from the core song. We have the recorded music side of things, which is where the record label typically comes into play. We have the management side of things, and then we have the marketing side of things. I hope this first video has been useful and insightful, and it's given you a good overview of the music industry. Don't forget, you'll be able to get in touch with any of the facilitators if anything in the videos is unclear or you want a bit of extra advice. We look forward to catching up with you, hopefully in person soon, but if not, I should be dropping another video very soon. Take care.